Now, joining me to sort of discuss this and unpick some of these issues is writer and, barrister, broadcaster and futurist Andrew Eborn. Is Andrew available? Is he there?
I am available. I'm here, Ali. I was just listening to your brilliant interview.
Oh, fantastic, Andrew. Good. Welcome.
It's lovely to be reconnected. I love it.
Yeah, welcome, Andrew. Really good to have you. So there's a lot going on about AI, and it doesn't seem to be going away at all. What impact do you think that AI will have on jobs?
Well, I talk around the world on AI and the massive impact that it's going to have. And it's actually Stephen Hawking who said it's our greatest human achievement, but could be the biggest existential threat. And many people, as you say, every single day there are several stories about artificial intelligence and the scaremongering about how it will impact our jobs. And Goldman Sachs themselves, they predict about 300 million jobs will be lost to AI and robotics. And actually, if you look at the advances in technology throughout time, I mean, the most common surname in the UK at the moment is Smith, which came from the blacksmiths and metal workers of old, from the Old English Anglo-Saxon smid, which basically means to hit or strike metal. And there are currently about, 750,000 smiths here in the UK, but not that many blacksmiths. So jobs are changing all the time. We have, obviously, the printing press and Johannes Gutenberg in 1436 and the backlash about how that was going to impact jobs. And the reality is this, is that undoubtedly jobs are going to go, and virtually any job that can be automated, and also in the creative industries, is going to have a massive impact. But what we have to also do is to weigh up the advantages, and there are tremendous advantages across all sorts of things, not just in terms of making things more efficient, but also in terms of assisting creativity and so on and so forth. So the way to look at things is to understand how the technology works and to basically enhance and embrace that technology, whilst at the same time being very cautious about the consequences.
Well, just before we continue our conversation just on jobs, Andrew, I just wanted to throw it open to the audience, because I'm discussing with Andrew about jobs and what's happening in AI, and I wanted to ask the audience out there listening, how worried are you that AI could cost you your job? Call me on 03456060973, text me on 84850 and tweet me at LBC. So Andrew, you've talked about the fact that jobs change over time, and this is something that Goldman Sachs, in this report that they came out with a few months ago, when they said that 300 million jobs could go. But they also said that 40% of the jobs today were not around in 1960. So it also could create jobs as well. How do you see it, Andrew?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what we need to do. We need to understand the technology. And actually, if you put things into perspective, ChatGPT was only launched at the end of November last year. And how many news stories every single day are sort of talking about it? I mean, the World Wide Web was only invented in 1989, and look at the impact that has had. Yeah. So technology has advanced tremendously. The Times also today were talking about the massive impact on education. And undoubtedly, they're now worried about, obviously, ChatGPT producing all sorts of work and so on and so forth. But then you look at things like 1967, we had the invention of the calculator, where people didn't have to do arithmetic in their heads anymore, and so on and so forth. The spell checker in February 1971. So all of these things are making life easy. What we need to do is to evolve. And the way that I suggest in the education sector, for example, is that you're going to find people doing more oral presentation, which would be a great skill which people are losing on that sort of basis. So we need to look at these things. I don't know, have you tried ChatGPT yourself?
I haven't tried it, but I know people who have. And in fact, one of my colleagues actually asked it to write a poem, a love poem, which apparently was very convincing. And in fact, I mean, there's a piece in one of the papers today saying that AI has been the best boyfriend that someone's ever had. I mean, they're actually coming out of those. But what kind of, on the jobs front, Andrew, what kind of jobs do you think will go? Because there's a lot of talk about white-collar jobs going now, like bankers and lawyers and these kind of jobs going.
Well, you're absolutely right. I think every job is going to have an impact on it. Sir Geoffrey Voss, who's the master of the roles, he predicted that actually AI is going to be even more powerful than a lot of lawyers, because obviously it can disseminate huge amounts of information very quickly. It can draft documents and so on and so forth. And it's basically, if you look at the various things around the world, it's passed the bar exams, it's passed medical exams. A report in the Times very recently said that ChatGPT was more empathetic than a real duty.
Well, it keeps learning, doesn't it, you see?
Yes,
I was listening to Yuval Noah Harari talking about this, and he was talking about the more information you engage with a bot, you're not going to change the bot's mind. So by actually engaging with it, for example, on how the bot's going to vote in an election, you're wasting your time because it's a bot. But what it is doing is it's actually assuming more and more information from you, which it can then use back. I mean, what kind of... What you also mentioned, Andrew, quite rightly, that it could create jobs and that jobs change over time. What kind of jobs could it create?
Well, I think if you use it as a tool, that's the most powerful thing. So, for example, it won very recently. You talked about the fake Drake and Weeknd song, Heart on My Sleeve.
Which is pretty good, actually.
Oh, phenomenal. And it fooled the world. Millions and millions of streams with people. And it was only when it came out that actually it was a fake one. But also you've got things like an AI-generated image. It won the world-renowned photography competition. And it wasn't until the person who won went up on stage and said, oh, by the way, it wasn't me, it was an AI-generated one, that they did it. So what we need to do is to actually harness that sort of side. I mean, it's interesting, and I would recommend you can do a free version. Everybody can hop onto ChatGPT and try it. I tapped in today, is AI dangerous? I asked it itself, basically, is it going to do that? And its response was, well, AI can be both beneficial and potentially risky. The levels of danger associated with AI depends on various factors, including the application, design, and employment. And it talks about job displacement, privacy and security, but also things like bias and discrimination. And I don't know if you saw a number of reports. They said, look, show us the perfect man and perfect woman. And it came up with a picture, probably very similar to what you and I look like, of an incredibly muscular man and a virtually anorexic woman with all sorts of unfeasible proportions. And it shows that what happens, and it does, absolutely, do look it up. What it shows is the bias and discrimination that you can get. The machine is only as good as the information that gets put in. And so what I would always urge everybody is we're drowning in a sea of information, most of which is false. So we should always question everything. And it's looking at that sort of side. But my best advice is to use it as a tool to understand the technology. And that's what I do around the world. I mean, you talked about AI and love. There was a wonderful format to which I was down in Cannes helping TBS, who do Takashi's Castle and Ninja Warriors. There's one of their formats called AI or Love by AI. And what the AI would do is basically find you your perfect mate, tell you what to say during the date. With
Sounds very helpful.
Absolutely very helpful. The trouble is people are going to be having their head in the screens and not being able to talk properly. True. And that's why I think the good thing about this, and I would urge the people who are talking about education, is look at other ways that we can increase our skill set. And I think verbal presentation, oral presentations for exams and with students should certainly be the way to go. But don't put your head in the sand. Technology is here. It's going to advance tremendously, and we should embrace it and not restrict it.
Andrew, what kind of guardrails should be put in place? Because obviously Rishi Sunak's at the G7. He's talking about policing AI, and people are talking about the kind of protections that need to be in place. Obviously, you've had Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, quitting Google, really worried about the dangers of misinformation and it being used by bad actors. What kind of policing of AI do we need to put in place?
Well, I'll tell you, there's a couple of things. We don't want to over-regulate because over-regulation will basically stunt growth. What we need to do is to recognize the issues. So one of the problems with chatbots and other AI, there's Bard, obviously, from Google, and Google announced last week that they've integrated that with its search engines. That's going to happen. One of the problems with this is what are called hallucinations. And basically, when chatbot doesn't know an answer, it makes it up. And so if you ask for references, if you're writing an article, say, please insert references, if they don't know what they are, they put it up. And there's been all sorts of things which will lead to defamation cases. For example, there was a US law professor who was falsely accused of sexually harassing students. And it was all false. The chatbot just made it up.
Terrible.
There was also an Australian mayor who was falsely claimed he was imprisoned for bribery, which was completely false. So the reality, the checks we need to have in place, and I mentioned Sir Geoffrey Voss, the Master of the Rolls previously, and how it's going to be used in legal cases, basically to disseminate huge amounts of information, prepare witness statements and so on and so forth. What they have to reduce the risk of hallucination, it tells the program not to say, not to make something up, but to say what it doesn't know. It's rather like a politician. You'd rather wish that they say, well, actually, I don't know the answer to to that one rather than making it up. So this is what's going to happen. Those sort of safeguards need to be put in place. We also need to make sure that there are no things such as automated weapons and so on and so forth, because that is your real scary moment. If a chatbot misunderstands or an AI misunderstands, solve climate problems, and it looks at all the research on the internet. Well, what's the biggest cause of climate problems? According to a lot of people out there, it's humanity. So the chatbot or the AI may turn around and say, well, get rid of humanity. That will get rid of climate problems. It's the other thing. It could also misunderstand how do you stop human misery? Well, rather like, if an animal is not feeling very good and is in a terrible state, you would put it down. The chatbot may misunderstand those instructions. So we need safeguards in place. Yeah. You need to make sure it's a powerful tool and not a weapon.
Fascinating discussion. Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. Andrew Eborn there, barrister, broadcaster and futurist. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. So you heard Andrew.